climate change and political chaos and all of these different challenges that we're facing, we still need to somehow instill optimism and hope.
Welcome to Syncreate, a show where we explore the intersections between creativity, psychology, and spirituality. Our goal is to demystify the creative process and expand the boundaries of what it means to be creative. I'm Melinda Rothaus, and I help individuals and organizations bring their creative dreams and visions to life. So, my guest today, and we are recording today in Spain, in Girona, where we are hosting a retreat focusing on personal sustainability and creativity. We've been here for the last week with a wonderful group of participants, including my dear friend, Robert Cleve, who we'll be talking with today. He is the head of the Creativity, Innovation, and Leadership Specialization in the Humanistic Psychology program at Saybrook University. That's also where I did my PhD and where I am currently adjunct faculty. Robert was previously at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in the International Psychology program, and hopefully we'll hear a bit more about that in our conversation. So welcome, Robert. So good to be here with you in this retreat. And
it's been wonderful. Yeah.
It's been a real treat.
Yeah. We're almost done.
We're almost done. Yep. We're getting ready to leave tomorrow. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity to chat with you. We've been talking about doing this for a little while now, and here we are together in person, which is great. And so what we're kind of going to start today is talking about this program at Saybrook in creativity, innovation, and leadership. And you have spent a lot of time and energy and work kind of reconfiguring this program. So when I graduated in 2018, it was creativity studies.
Right.
And now you've kind of reorganized and changed the specialization name to bring in innovation and leadership. And so I know you've put a lot into this, and I'm really curious to hear more about this change and kind of the structure and the thought process behind it.
Sure. We when I came to Saybrook full time as the creativity studies lead, I was that was in January of 22, and I was really quite enamored with the program, with the specialization, mostly with the students who are just absolutely wonderful and energized and wanting to. They just crave this knowledge about the creativity field.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was conscious of when I was preparing to accept the position full-time was from my international psychology background. We did a lot of multicultural, multinational work.
Yeah.
And we really encouraged our students, as that was also a PhD program, with the final deliverable being a research dissertation project. And as we were looking at the curriculum that was involved in creativity studies, we were also aware that the program didn't seem to have the number of students that the university was hoping it might enjoy at some point.
And I will just interject there that, when I was looking around for programs in psychology focusing on creativity, this is one of the few programs in the country that has this particular focus. So it's quite a unique offering, but maybe didn't have the visibility.
Yeah, there was an issue of visibility, but there was also an issue of how Western psychology appreciates the construct of creativity, as it is often tied very much with Masters of Fine Arts programs and the performance arts and only the arts, as opposed to broadening that concept to business, to law, to the other areas that we're really conscious are using creativity every day to solve the world's problems.
Absolutely.
And as we started to marry the international psychology thinking with the creativity studies program, I was aware that we weren't giving much traction to the idea of what is being produced out of the program, and also the pretty consistent modeling of leadership that our students brought to the program. Many of our students had achieved master's degrees in a variety of areas. And what I encourage anyone thinking about the program to explore for themselves is the idea of how do they bring what they already know and enhance that with the PhD, as opposed to reconfigure themselves with the PhD.
Yeah.
So it's not a total reinvention. And so as the re-envisioning of the specialization began to take place, we were looking at different areas that we could bring into 2023 that included neuroaesthetics, artificial intelligence, ways of creating that are on the edge. And the idea of exploring phenomena through research, through study, that isn't always, embraced by other universities. The corollary of our creativity studies program was the consciousness, spirituality, and integrative health program. So we also enjoy humanistic psychology, existential psychology, and transpersonal psychology, which is the exploration of religion and spirituality.
Yeah.
So as we brought those things together along with culture, multinationality, the other aspects that really inform who we are, I was looking for authors who were on the cutting edge of doing that work. And one of the things that we were really successful with over the summer is collaborating with several of our students on the ideas of how we could reimagine our introductory program and the final course that is taken. So it's the intro course and then the applied course in the specialization.
Yeah.
And then there's a variety of electives within that.
Yeah. I mean, and this shift in the specialization is near and dear to my heart because I focus for my research on organizational creativity, and I work with leaders and executives in my work, and I think it's so important, to recognize the creativity that is going on in the world, in the organizational realm, in all these areas that you described. And that's part of what we're trying to do in this podcast as well, is to kind of shine a light. And I see the light is shining on me currently, on all these areas of creativity that are happening in the world that we might not immediately think, oh, well, that's an example of creativity. But as you say, to deal with and attempt to solve the complex problems that we're facing in the world right now, of which there are so many, we really need creative thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also, the pandemic taught us so many things. And one of those was how creativity was employed on a daily basis to do things, something even as simple as, how do I get my kids to go to school?
Yes.
How am I able to solve that everybody's at home all at the same time? Mm-hmm. And I think we don't give ourselves credit often when we are achieving that problem solving, incorporating divergent thinking, and really exploring all of our resources and the things that come to us. So we have several models that we employ as we look at how creativity, innovation, and leadership are taught to our students. And if we look at creativity only through the lens of professional creativity or eminent or the big names of creativity, the Michelangelos and the Da Vincis, we don't take ownership of creativity in a way. And historically, it was only assigned to the divine. The creativity could not be owned by humankind. It used to be called mankind. But and as we explore these things and we are able to take ownership of how creativity is generated, how it is brought to life, that we can also take responsibility, for solving a lot of problems in the world. And as we are in this point in the world of climate change and political chaos and all of these different challenges that we're facing, we still need to somehow instill optimism and hope that things can get better. And to one of my favorite authors, Vlad Glavino, what is possible, and not to forget how important and critical that is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to kind of draw attention back to something you mentioned, that sort of notion of everyday creativity, which one of our esteemed faculty who was on my committee, Dr. Ruth Richards, has written extensively about, creativity in these everyday contexts and how we're constantly exercising it just as we go about our daily lives.
Yeah, our professor emerita, Ruth Richards, has really done a deeper dive into the little c and the mini c aspects of the 4 C's of creativity, which are eminent, pro, mini, and little. But again, we have to give credit for the everyday components that we all use to survive. And I think if we all think back on different challenges and different phases of our lives, we become aware of not only our creative aspect with art and with being able to imagine something through play, through sculpture, through writing, through poetry, all of the different ways that we express creativity in our medium of choice. It also is critical that we look at how we use creativity and innovation to survive and to get from day to day to day.
Yeah.
And still maintain our sanity,
exactly.
right?
Right. So there's this whole element of creativity and healing, which we talked about in a previous episode. And, that's something that I think we've been exploring here in this retreat. So many of us here, our creative work is intimately intertwined with our life circumstances. And we're using our creativity to kind of make meaning of our experiences, of the challenges that we encounter in life, and kind of sometimes in playful ways, sometimes in very serious ways, just sort of channeling our creativity to heal ourselves and to save ourselves.
And then to even move it further along the spectrum, that we're aware how creativity and innovation impacts the healing of trauma or even maybe lesser mental health challenges with anxiety, stress, depression. But also how, in my own research, I was exploring the phenomena of how gay youth decide to disclose their identities, and through a lens of how we have the option of concealable, stigmatized identities. And these youth are probably some of the most creative people,
Right.
not because they're artistic, but that they survive from the one day to the next.
Yeah.
And they can develop this narrative that allows them to survive without disclosing, their identity. And, when we then traverse back and we allow those narratives to come forward in the form of stories or poetry or art and different ways, it's pretty powerful stuff that we're able to embrace in a way that makes us feel really good as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, so you mentioned your own research and kind of your background in international psychology. So some of our listeners may not be familiar with that field. So could you share with us a little bit more about kind of what is international psychology, and specifically like what sort of lens does it bring?
So, so when in working with the students, I was teaching in that program for 9 years after I graduated in it, and we were able to, employ the idea of cultural humility. That as we would go to other countries, my destinations were pretty much Sao Paulo, Brazil, Istanbul, Turkey, and Hong Kong. And I would take students, anywhere from 10 to 15 of them, on immersion experiences into that culture to think about how they might do research and how they might capture the narratives and the lived experiences of their participants. And we always talk about the participants' information as a gift.
Yeah.
It needs to be appreciated, nurtured, and honored in ways that only sometimes we can do. But we also need to be aware that how we interpret that, whether it's through language. When I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, they speak Portuguese there. And most folks think, first of all, that they speak Spanish in Brazil. But negotiating that language was key to being successful, and working within the indigenous psychology of not tribal nations, but the how Brazil has made psychology their own. And that lens had to be honored when I was doing my interpretation. So luckily I had someone on my committee that was faculty at the University of Sao Paulo. And as we explored different areas of the world, one of the criteria was it couldn't be a Western informed nation. So we would always encourage students to think about how they could access these different groups, cultural groups, honor how you enter into those groups, which is often a negotiation with folks. I know I had probably one of the most intense interviews of my life in trying to explain why I wanted to come to Brazil and do this work. Somehow I evidently succeeded, which was wonderful. But the gift of what those young men gave me, of their stories, really enhanced the research, and it allowed me to pull thematic material that also then informed me going to Istanbul and recreating that study, a grounded theory study with Muslim youth, because religion was the key theme that we were going through. So the International Psychology program really was a lens globally, and I always thought of it more as an opportunity that we were offering to our students that they may not get in any other kind of psychology program.
Yeah. I'm curious. So coming from the international psychology background into this kind of world of creativity studies, so you have a kind of a unique perspective on things. And so I'm curious what you have found most salient or most helpful in kind of thinking about the field of the study of creativity.
Yeah, it's the psychology of it, of creativity, innovation, and leadership. And we don't want to minimize the impact that the leadership piece has on that. And I think often what we're helping the students do is assess their leadership skills, and also to encourage them to use those skills in a way that can move them in a direction of or put them on a trajectory for their employment that offers so much more than it looking like creativity studies on their transcript. It doesn't show up on their diploma, but they can share that with potential employers. But you and I actually had a really important conversation about a focus for leadership in which we were using particular authors that really enhanced the two courses that we wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this topic of leadership, I work with a lot of leaders and executives, but I also emphasize that we all exercise leadership in different ways, whether it's through formal roles or, in our lives and our families and our communities, whatever we may be doing. There are many, leadership looks many different ways.
Yeah.
It's not just, being a CEO.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I as we even were looking over the course of this week in Spain, and you were guiding us on the exploration of what not only the work we're doing, but what the intent is behind that work.
Yeah.
And that ability to stop and self-reflect is so critical and so important. And the coaching work that you do, in addition to that, where you're able to help folks assess and then guide, to their strengths. We so often in psychology, we're only looking at the challenges that people face.
That's true.
And if we embrace the entire spectrum of who we are, I think that it affords us a much more important opportunity to look forward to the future instead of sometimes the dread of, gosh, what is tomorrow going to bring?
Yeah.
And taking control over some of that and making the decision to do something like coming to Spain to do a creative writing retreat. It isn't the highest priority in the world, but it's so powerful, and it was such a wonderful opportunity, and I can't thank you enough for that.
No, thank you. It's great to hear that, and yeah, I think it's so important to find whatever ways we can in our lives, whatever is possible given our circumstances, to take those moments to step back and reflect, whether it's, just a weekend away or a few hours away. Or we were talking earlier today about, ways to get perspective on our lives and how hard that is when we're just sort of in the weeds of things.
Yeah. And returning again to Dr. Glavinow's work and his perspectival worlds that he envisions, and how even when we're in the weeds and we're in the muck of life, if we can take a moment to look at the bigger picture and step above that, not in the sense of being above it, but just having a different lens so we can look at it holistically, which is one of the hallmarks of humanistic psychology. We're looking at the entire person, not just their pathology or their challenges. It's so important.
Yeah. So to kind of conclude our conversation today, I want to touch into your own personal creativity. So I know you're a glass artist. You work with stained glass and fused glass. And I guess I'm curious, we've been talking throughout this week about each of our own kind of personal and professional creativity. What does that look like for you? Like, how does your glass work relate to the other work you do in the world and vice versa?
I think one of the most important things was it on a completely personal level. I enjoy being able to use the medium of glass because of the textures of it and the possibilities of it. The way we use stained glass through the different techniques of creating an object, or the fused glass technique, which even gives us more. It's not blowing glass, but the most powerful aspect that I've learned since living in Colorado in the mountains is that I'm in a community that during the pandemic, I kept trying to think, how can we embrace our creativity in a way, and how can I share what I know about glass with other folks?
Yeah.
And so I used Nextdoor, and I just posted something and said, I am thinking about doing a stained glass class. Is anybody interested? Well, we had enough people for 3 classes almost immediately.
Amazing.
So I think people were just hungry for something that got them out of their houses. I mean, we had to follow the rules about, of things that were going on during the pandemic and masks and all of that stuff, which we navigated really successfully. But what I was most surprised by is the thirst for folks to be able to do something, whether it's craft or creativity or innovate. And the spark that I would see is that I would give them the pattern choices. They could choose from 4 or 5 patterns, and inevitably they would pick the same 1 or 2, the groups. But while we were doing the building of the stained glass windows, they would often say, "Well, I wonder if I did this, or I had an idea about doing something with my cat, in it, and something like that." And that's when you see the realization of the spark of creativity, and they do own it, no matter how much protestation there was. That I'm not a creative person, right? And we see that all the time. We see that in the research of our students and the ideas that they come up with. And we were talking about earlier that no matter the plethora of books that have been written, there's still more to say.
Absolutely.
There's still more to talk about.
Absolutely.
Which is really wonderful for academia and for humankind.
Yeah. So if people are interested in learning more about the program in creativity, innovation, and leadership and your own work, how might they find out?
So my email for Saybrook is simply rcleve, like Cleveland, the first part of it. So RCLEVE at saybrook.edu. And my glass business, you can find the website at Glassco, Colorado, GLASSCO.org.
Hey, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for doing this with me today. And so great to be here with you in Spain.
You too.
And